Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we are going to do a super fun deep dive into something we can all relate to, lateness.
I know, right? It happens to the best of us.
For this deep dive, our source material is actually an English language lesson.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. It uses this workplace meeting scenario to teach vocabulary related to being late. But as we dug into it, we realized it actually goes way deeper than just vocab.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a universal experience, right? Being late.
Totally.
I feel like it says a lot about psychology, cultural norms, yeah, all that stuff.
Totally. Like how different cultures view time and even how the language we use shapes our whole perception of being late. It's fascinating.
Absolutely.
So this English lesson starts off with everyone arriving late to this meeting.
Oh, I love that. Classic.
Right. Everyone's trickling in and they've all got their excuses.
Yep.
You've got like the classic traffic jam excuse,
Okay.
the always vague, got tied up with a client,
Right.
and even someone blaming the Starbucks line.
Oh, come on now.
I know, right?
That's a new one.
But that's what makes it so relatable. And that's where things start to get really interesting because it's not just about the excuses themselves.
Right.
It's about the language we use,
Totally.
to frame them.
Yeah, like how we present those excuses to other people.
Exactly. Like, take the phrase got tied up, for instance. It almost sounds like the person was literally tied upright,
Yeah.
like physically restrained.
You're making it sound unavoidable.
Exactly. It's this clever way of making being late sound almost heroic.
Like it was completely out of your control.
Right. Like, I fought valiantly against the forces of tardiness, but alas, I was defeated.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
But then you have stuck in the Starbucks line, which, well, it doesn't quite have that same epic ring to it, does it?
Not really. That one's not gonna fly.
No, not so much. And I think that difference in the language we use highlights something really interesting about the psychology of excuses.
Tell me more.
Are we actually trying to justify our actions to other people?
Yeah. Or are we more concerned with managing how other people perceive us?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's like this fascinating glimpse into how we use language to shape the narrative,
Yeah.
even when it comes to something as everyday as being late.
Absolutely. It's like storytelling almost.
It is. Okay, but what happens when the excuses run dry?
Yeah, you got to have a backup plan.
Right. This lesson actually gives some good vocab for just straight up admitting you're running behind.
Okay, I like it.
Phrases like running late or my meeting ran over or even pile up.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. It's like a crash course in sounding fluent even when you're not exactly on time.
Love it. It's like you're in control even though you're not.
Totally. And it's funny because even these phrases reveal how the language we use can subtly shape how we think about being late.
How so?
Well, like running late, for example, it suggests this urgency, right? This active attempt to beat the clock.
Okay, yeah.
But then you have something like stuck in traffic, which implies helplessness.
Yeah, like you're at the mercy of something outside of your control.
Exactly. So it's like the language itself is shaping the story we're telling ourselves and other people about why we're late.
Fascinating.
But here's where things get really interesting.
I'm intrigued.
So the source material touches on this idea of Latino time versus North American punctuality. And it's like they're two completely different planets when it comes to time.
It really is. Two different worlds.
And that's what I think is so fascinating about this whole topic of lateness. It's a perfect gateway into this whole world of what's called chronemics.
Yes.
Which is the study of how different cultures perceive and value time.
It's a whole field of study. It's amazing.
It is. And it's not just about being on time or late,
Yeah, it goes deeper than that.
It's about these deeply ingrained cultural values that shape our entire relationship with time.
I mean, like some cultures are super task-oriented,
right?
Where schedules are everything. And then others prioritize relationships and flexibility.
Yeah.
And in those cultures, time is seen as more fluid.
So it's not just about individual personalities then.
Right.
It's like these bigger cultural forces are at play.
Exactly. And understanding those forces can help us move beyond those simplistic labels of punctual or tardy.
Yeah.
And we can start to appreciate the diversity of perspectives on time.
Totally.
And actually how those differences can enrich our interactions,
Yeah.
if we approach them with awareness and sensitivity.
So what you're saying is instead of getting frustrated when someone's late,
Right.
maybe we should take a second and think, okay, what's the cultural context here? Is this a time clash situation?
Exactly. It's about shifting from judgment to curiosity. because often those time clashes are actually opportunities to learn from each other.
And build stronger connections across cultures.
Totally. It's about recognizing that our own way of relating to time isn't the only valid one.
Right.
And by understanding these differences, we can create more harmonious and productive interactions.
This is blowing my mind. Who knew a simple English lesson about being late could lead to such deep insights about culture and psychology, and even language itself?
I know, right? It's so cool.
And we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, we are.
What's really fascinating is how this awareness of time culture can actually improve our communication and relationships in a really practical way.
Absolutely. It can make a real difference.
Okay, so how do we actually take this knowledge and apply it to our daily lives?
Well, I think for starters, we can start by being more aware of our own biases, and assumptions about time.
Like those ingrained cultural biases we all have.
Yeah, exactly. And then once we've done that, we can make a conscious effort to learn about and appreciate the different ways other cultures perceive and value time.
So it's like, instead of assuming everyone operates on the same time clock, we need to be more mindful and observant of how people approach time differently.
Exactly. It's about developing this cultural sensitivity when it comes to time.
Okay, I like that.
And that can open up a whole new level of understanding and connection in our interactions.
This is incredible. It's like we're uncovering this secret code to navigating the world of time with more grace and understanding.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
So imagine you're walking into this high-stakes business meeting.
Okay.
In Germany, let's say. Where being on time is like super important.
Okay. Yeah, punctuality is huge there.
Oh, yeah, it's practically a religion.
I've heard that.
Showing up even a minute late could, like, raise eyebrows.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
But then imagine you shift gears and you're at, like, a social gathering.
Okay.
In a culture where it's totally normal to be fashionably late.
Right. Like, it's expected, even.
Exactly. It's like two totally different rule books when it comes to time.
Totally.
And you can see how those different expectations could lead to some major misunderstandings.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, let's say you have a North American manager.
Okay.
Who's super focused on deadlines.
Right.
And they're working with a team from a culture where relationships are more important than strict timelines.
Oh, yeah. That could definitely cause some friction. Like, deadlines might get missed, feelings could get hurt.
Exactly. It's like everyone's speaking different languages.
Even if they're all speaking English.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding awkward situations either.
Right.
It's about recognizing that these time cultures often reflect deeper values.
That's interesting.
Like, take the concept of island time, for example.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
In some island cultures, life moves at a slower pace. There's an emphasis on enjoying the present moment.
Right.
Rather than, being ruled by the clock.
So it's not that people are lazy or disrespectful.
Right.
It's just a different way of seeing what's important.
Exactly. It's about what matters most in that moment.
And then you have a country like Japan.
Right.
Where punctuality is like everything.
It's highly valued.
From what I understand, it's a sign of respect and reliability. Like, if you show up on time, it means you value the other person's time?
Absolutely.
So I'm guessing being late in Japan is a much bigger deal than I ever realized.
It can be. It's not just about missing a meeting. It can be about damaging your reputation.
Wow. Okay.
And these cultural differences, they can extend beyond just the workplace, too.
Oh, of course.
Like, think about social events.
Oh, right. Good point.
In some cultures, it's rude to be late to a party.
Yeah.
But in others, it's totally expected.
I guess it's even encouraged in some places, right?
Totally. So it can get really tricky.
So how do we navigate this whole complex world of time without constantly offending people?
Well, I don't think it's about memorizing every cultural rule.
Yeah, that would be impossible.
Right. There's just too many.
Uh-huh.
It's more about cultivating a sense of awareness.
Okay.
And sensitivity.
Like being curious about other cultures.
Yeah. Ask questions. Be observant.
Okay.
And, just recognize that our own way of seeing time isn't the only way.
Right. Like what might seem rude in one culture.
Right.
Could be totally normal in another.
Exactly. So instead of judging someone for being late, maybe we should stop and think, okay, what's the cultural context here?
Right.
Is this a time language difference?
Yeah, I like that. And sometimes a little humor can help too, right?
Oh, totally. It can lighten the mood.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're all human.
We are.
We're all dealing with the pressures of time.
Yeah, we've all been on both sides of that late arrival scenario.
Absolutely. What matters is how we choose to respond to it, right?
I think so.
Do we react with frustration?
Right.
Or do we try to understand what's really going on?
It's about choosing empathy over judgment.
I love that.
And, recognizing that these time clashes, they can actually be opportunities to learn.
And grow.
Totally. And, that brings up an interesting question.
Okay, what's that?
What if, instead of just being aware of these time differences, we could actually use them to our advantage?
Ooh, I like where this is going.
To communicate better, to build stronger relationships.
So like turning a potential source of conflict into a strength.
Exactly.
Okay, how do we do that?
Well, imagine this. Instead of just saying, sorry, I'm late, traffic was a nightmare.
Right, the go-to excuse.
Exactly. We take a minute and explain the delay in a way that takes the other person's culture into account.
So like if I'm meeting with someone from a culture that really values punctuality, I might say something like, I apologize for the delay, I got caught in traffic, but I deeply value your time and I'm really eager to get started.
Yeah, that's a great example.
So it acknowledges the delay, but also emphasizes respect.
Exactly. It's about being mindful, both of our own time and the time of others, and communicating in a way that promotes understanding and respect.
I like that.
And, if you're working with a team from a culture where building relationships is key, maybe you acknowledge that up front.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
So instead of rushing right into the agenda, you might say something like, I know we have a lot to cover today, but before we dive in, I'd love to hear a little bit about your weekend of the year. It's important to me that we connect on a personal level.
Oh, that's a great example. It shows that you get their approach to time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about adapting our communication style to bridge those cultural gaps.
This is mind-blowing. It's like we're not just learning about time. We're learning this whole new language.
Totally.
A language of empathy and connection.
Exactly. But there's so much more to explore here.
Oh, I bet. This is fascinating.
We've just scratched the surface. Let's dig deeper into some real-world scenarios.
Okay, love it.
And explore how these time cultures can really impact our interactions.
Yeah, from business to friendship,
Exactly. From negotiations to just hanging out.
Let's do it. I'm so ready to dive in. So we've talked about all these different time cultures and how they can lead to all these misunderstandings.
Right.
But can you give me some real-world examples?
Sure. Like, imagine you're in an international business negotiation.
Okay.
And you have a team from the U.S., let's say, who are super schedule-driven.
Right, like time is money.
Totally. Their goal is to get the deal signed by Friday.
Okay.
But they're negotiating with a team from, say, Spain, where building relationships is way more important.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would clash.
And they really value flexibility, too.
Right, so the U.S. team's probably like, let's just get this done.
Exactly. And the Spanish team might feel like, hold on, we need to get to know each other first.
Oh, man, that could create some serious tension.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like the U.S. team might think the Spanish team is dragging their feet.
Right.
And the Spanish team might feel rushed and disrespected.
Exactly. And those misinterpretations can have real consequences.
Right, like the deal could fall apart.
It happens. Like the U.S. team might miss out on a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Because they didn't take the time to build that rapport.
Right, they were too focused on the deadline.
Exactly. Or the Spanish team could end up feeling pressured.
Yeah.
To sign an agreement they're not really comfortable with.
Oh, that makes sense. So how do you even begin to navigate those situations?
Well, communication is key, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like before they even start talking numbers. Both sides should just acknowledge their different approaches to time.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like the U.S. team could explain that in their culture, being on time is a sign of respect.
Okay.
And the Spanish team could emphasize how important personal connections are to them.
I like that. It's like setting some ground rules for the interaction.
Right. Acknowledging that they have different time languages.
Exactly. And it's not just about the words they say, right?
Definitely not.
It's also about paying attention to those nonverbal cues.
Oh, for sure.
Like, does the other team seem relaxed? Or are they, like, constantly checking their watches?
Exactly. Are they making eye contact? Are they taking the time to chat before getting down to business?
So it's like being a cultural detective almost.
Yes.
Looking for clues to decipher their time language.
Totally. And once you have a better sense of where they're coming from,
yeah,
you can adjust your own behavior accordingly.
Okay, that's a good strategy.
Like maybe the U.S. team builds an extra time for those informal interactions.
Okay.
Or the Spanish team makes more of an effort to stick to a schedule.
So it's all about finding that compromise, right?
Exactly.
Where everyone feels respected and understood.
Right. And this doesn't just apply to business, right?
Oh, of course not.
These time clashes happen in personal relationships, too.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Like, let's say you have a friend who's always late.
Oh, I've been there.
Right. And you're a punctual person.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
So you feel like it's disrespectful. Yeah.
Totally. Like they don't value my time.
But what if your friend is from a culture where it's just normal to be a little more flexible with time?
I hadn't thought about it that way.
You know, maybe they don't even realize it's a big deal to you.
So instead of getting mad, I should just talk to them about it.
Exactly. You can explain how their lateness makes you feel.
Right.
But you should also be open to hearing their perspective.
Yeah, good point.
It's about turning that potential conflict into an opportunity to strengthen the friendship.
And learn from each other's differences.
Exactly. It's amazing how time can have such a big impact on our relationships.
It really is. So I guess the key takeaway here is that we should all try to be more aware of these different time cultures.
Totally.
And approach those time clashes with empathy and understanding.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about remembering that there's no one right way to experience time.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I really feel like I have a whole new perspective on time.
That's what we like to hear.
And how it affects our interactions in ways I never even realized before.
And that's the power of digging deeper, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, looking beyond the surface to uncover all those hidden layers of complexity.
So to all our listeners out there, the next time you find yourself in a time clash situation, remember, take a deep breath, consider the cultural context.
Okay.
And communicate with empathy.
Love it.
You might be surprised at the connections you can make.
You never know.
Simply by understanding the different ways we all experience time.
And who knows, you might even start to appreciate those moments when things don't go exactly according to plan.
That's interesting.
Because sometimes it's those unexpected delays and detours that lead to the most interesting conversations.
Oh, I like that.
And connections.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating deep dive into the world of lateness and time cultures.
It's my pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.